Welcome back, guys. So in the first segment of this video we talk about cell membrane or plasma membrane, and we saw that it's made up of phospholipid bilayer and associated proteins. Then we talk about the fluidity of the plasma membrane, the lateral movement it shows for the purpose of endocytosis as well as exocytosis. The fluidity is also for the membrane synthesis or simply membrane biogenesis. There are various proteins present in the lipid bilayer like glycoproteins, channels, carrier proteins, enzymes, etc. There's also cholesterol present in between the lipid bilayer. So actually there are two layers. The outer layer, which is further made up of two types of phospholipids, that's phosphatidylcholine and the other is sphingomyelin. And the internal lipid layer is made up of two phospholipids, that's phosphatidylethylamine and phosphatidylserine. So until now we have discussed this. Now in this segment we will talk about the some different types of proteins present in this lipid bilayer. So the first protein is the integral protein, or simply it's also called as intrinsic protein. It's present all over the lipid bilayer, and it constitutes about 70% of the total protein content of the plasma membrane. Its only function is to allow the polar molecules to move across the membrane. As the polar molecules cannot cross the lipid bilayer directly, so it chooses this way. That means the integral proteins allows the polar molecules to move across the membrane. And then there are peripheral proteins. Peripheral proteins are also called as extrinsic proteins, and they constitute about 30% total protein content of the plasma membrane, or simply the lipid bilayer. And there are different kinds of integral proteins present in the plasma membrane, like channel proteins. The function of the channel proteins is to allow the water movements across the membrane. There are some special type of proteins which undergo transformation. That's they change their shape and shifts the substance into the cell. Actually they are shifting the substance from outside into the cell. These special proteins are called as carrier proteins. There are also some proteins which help in the cell to give its shape or makes the cytoskeleton of the cell. These proteins are usually called as linker proteins. It's also type of integral protein. There are some other integral proteins like receptors, which brings the signal into the cell from the outside environment. There are also some special type of proteins throughout the membrane which converts one substance into the other, and the special proteins which do this function, we generally call them enzymes. So in nutshell, integral proteins plays a major role in allowing the polar molecules to come into the cell, and the peripheral proteins are less as compared to integral proteins, and the peripheral proteins are non-covalently attached. They can be